All the shots and strategies we have covered so far involve hitting the cue ball directly in the center, the elementary plain ball strike with no intended extra spin applied to the cue ball at all. If you're mainly employing these plain ball tactics during your competitive pool, you will probably at best be potting 2 or 3 balls in a row and trusting mainly to luck that you'll land on another color. In order to progress to a 4 or 5 ball run, and maybe even the elusive 8 ball clearance Jason is demonstrating, having looked at the control of the body and the control of the cue, you must now move on to the next stage, controlling the cue ball itself. There is no mystery about cue ball control at pool. It is simply a combination of particular strokes. To make sizable runs regularly, you must possess potting accuracy and the mastery of certain skills and techniques which will gain you reasonable position for the next ball. Reasonable position is the appropriate phrase here, because the best anybody can usually hope for is to stop the white in a general area of the table. To halt the cue ball on a sixpence is virtually impossible, even for professionals. The first technique to analyze, the screw shot, involves engaging backspin on the cue ball. Notice in slow motion how a ball can be rotating backwards but still be moving forwards. This is the key behind all screw or draw strokes. The ability to master the concepts behind applying backspin to the white will literally add another dimension to your game because, for the first time perhaps, you'll not be limited to simply rolling the cue ball forward after each successful pot. In order to effectively strike the cue ball below center like this, it is important to lower your bridge hand and not simply raise the butt end of your cue, which can lead to embarrassing mistakes and spectacular trick shots. Basically, the bridge is the only part of your body that alters when you play a screw shot. You must lower it as much as possible, as we can see here in close-up, and drop the cocked thumb slightly to allow for a smooth follow-through. The amount of backspin you will achieve when playing screw shots depends on the pace of the shot and where on the white you actually make contact with the cue. Providing you have a well-maintained and chalked cue tip, you should be able to aim well below center to really generate some fizz on the cue ball. As a brief aside, let's watch the professional highlight some of the different degrees of backspin that are attainable by merely varying the depth of aim alone. Another factor influencing the successful execution of a screw shot is the actual grip adopted on the butt of the cue. A useful analogy is to imagine throwing a hoop and making it spin back towards you. The same feel in the wrist and the slight tightening of the grip at the moment of release, or impact in this instance, is required to generate the desired backspin. Take a look at the situation shown here from overhead. The cue ball is on the black's spot, almost in a direct line with a yellow about halfway to the nearest pocket. Watch as the professional first pots this yellow plain ball, and notice the resulting resting place of the white. If the object ball is then replaced and the shot replayed using backspin, The difference between the original plainly struck white and the second screwed cue ball is obvious. You should now be beginning to realize the advantages of cue ball control in the game of pool. Imagine Jason was playing for the black to win a match. The first stroke would be no good at all, whereas the second draw shot has left perfect position. Conversely, if the black was in the position occupied by the red, then the plain ball strike would have been the correct option. This type of shot selection will only come with experience, and it is vital if you have any aspirations of making regular winning clearances. To increase the difficulty of these screw shot exercises, it is simply a matter of setting up some straight pots around the table and practicing them, gradually moving the white further and further away from the object ball. Don't forget, it's still important to remember the basics we've covered, such as stance, sighting, bridging, and grip. Once you have mastered these full ball draw shots, you can then begin to experiment with the effects of engaging backspin on angled pots and the wide range of options this knowledge can bring to your game. Screwing the white into a corner pocket, as Jason is demonstrating, is probably the best way to help beginners comprehend the basic principles of the angled screw shot. By gradually increasing the distance between the yellow and the target, but still shooting the cue ball from the same position, a real understanding of the techniques required to generate backspin can be learnt very quickly. Practicing this routine for an hour or so will teach you more about the screw shot than any textbook could in a month. When attempting to play a screw shot, you might sometimes find that the white actually carries on forwards after making contact with the object ball, rather than drawing back towards you as intended. The reason for this usually stems from not hitting the cue ball hard enough and causing what is known as a drag shot to take place. Dragging simply means that although the cue ball starts off with a measure of backspin as before, it does not have sufficient momentum to carry this spin all the way to the object ball. So, how can this technique be used to improve your pool? Well, if you're faced with a predicament similar to the one now illustrated, the drag shot could be your best option. It should be clear that, as the yellow requires a half-ball contact to pot it, anything other than the slowest pace on the cue ball will see the white bounce too far down the table to retain position. When playing at slower speeds, though, even if your sighting and cue action is perfect, the white can roll off on the nap and the pot is missed. By applying drag, however, you can afford to strike much harder, negating most of the deviation on the bays. Yet, by the time the cue ball reaches the yellow, it is traveling slowly enough to pot the ball and still stay on the black. Let's watch the shot again, but this time replacing the white with an American 12 ball. The engraved stripe serves perfectly to illustrate the effects of drag. Notice how at first, although traveling forwards, the ball rotates in the opposite direction until the backspin wears off, causing it to skid momentarily on the bays before rolling forward slowly to complete the pot. Remember, the techniques applying to drag of stance, bridging, and striking low on the cue ball are almost the same as playing with screw. You just need a softer stroke and perhaps a bit more snap in the follow-through. Although the necessity to execute the drag shot doesn't occur too often, except when attempting maximum side spin, which we'll cover later, sometimes it's the only sensible option open to you, so it is well worth practicing. Having studied the effects of screw and drag shots and the backspin they can generate on the cue ball, the next logical stage of your coaching is to learn the art of topspin. The important part to remember about topspin, and backspin and drag for that matter, is that you're still aiming to strike along the imaginary vertical plane of the white. If you don't contact this center line when playing topspin, you will inadvertently apply what is called check or running side, which we'll discuss later. To engage pure topspin, you must strike marginally above the dead center of the cue ball. Although it will then travel forward in the usual manner, on impact with the color, the white will pick up extra momentum due to the topspin applied. As with screw shots, the only part of your body and stance that alters is the height of the bridging hand. The fingers should be drawn further inwards, raising the level of the bridge. Resist all temptation to lower the butt of the cue when applying top. The stroke will be driven through with an underlying upward motion, often leading to embarrassing miscues. It should be embedded in your mind by now. The cue must remain almost parallel to the bed of the table during all strokes. The exceptions to the rule, as we shall discover in detail in the sequel Advanced Techniques video, are the very difficult and dangerous swerve shots, which require an almost upright bridge. Back to the shot in question. Let's see what happens when we set up the familiar practice black and execute the shot with topspin. Notice as Jason plays the stroke, his bridge hand has been raised to facilitate a level and smooth cue action. Having applied topspin on the white, the spin generated carries the cue ball all the way into the pocket after the black. Of course, in normal circumstances, this would result in loss of game, but for our tuition purposes, it perfectly highlights the effects topspin can create. Once you have become proficient at potting the balls from about 12 inches, try increasing the distance between the black and the white. At this stage, always practice straight pots and try to propel the cue ball into the pocket after the color. Don't be disheartened, however, if the white doesn't quite find the pocket every time, as nobody, not even professionals, are that good. If you manage to get it fairly close on a regular basis, you're doing very well. As you progress to angled shots, you will find that the effects topspin can cause are quite remarkable. Mind-boggling swerves and parabolic curves can be created merely by varying the strength in the stroke. Stop and stun shots are basically variations of the draw stroke we have already covered. When performed correctly, utilizing the stop technique will enable the white to halt in its tracks after colliding with an object ball, providing of course you're playing a full ball contact. The stop shot can be a very useful skill to master, as it is about the only time you will be able to guarantee 100% where the cue ball will come to rest after the stroke. Unfortunately, it is not the easiest shot on the pool table to accomplish accurately, as the exact point you need to strike the cue ball varies depending on how far away the object ball lies. The key to playing stop shots successfully relies on the understanding that the cue ball must actually be sliding on the cloth at the moment it strikes the color. If there is very little space between the object ball and the white, a plain center hit on the cue ball could be sufficient to slide the white and stop it dead. The more this distance increases, however, is in direct proportion to how low it is necessary to strike in order to create the desired stopping action. Another factor that greatly influences the outcome of stop shots is how much power is invested in the strike itself. The harder you initially punch the cue ball, the less backspin needs to be imparted to stop it. The reason for this is simple. A fast-moving white doesn't have any time to grip the cloth. It literally floats over the baize like a hovercraft until the object ball gets in the way. The so-called stun shot is nothing more than a stop shot at an angle. Providing you engage the familiar stop shot principles, any cue ball striking another ball a glancing blow will drift away on a 90-degree tangent after impact. These types of stun strokes are invaluable in your quest to learn accurate positional play, because they cut down the distance the cue ball has to travel after hitting its target ball. You'll find most professionals actively seek to leave themselves stop and stun shots during matches. They realize that these tactics drastically reduce the chances of running out of position, as they can play the white that much harder, yet still retain close control for the next ball. As we have seen, many perfect clearances are made purely by adopting stop and stun alone. It is true that the old saying, practice makes perfect, does apply in the game of pool, but only if you know how to practice correctly. Without a doubt, far too many enthusiastic players do not understand how to gain the most benefit from their practice time. So this chapter of the video is devoted entirely to constructive practice. Whilst some tutorials may try to make a case that any practice is better than no practice at all, we're going to work on the principle that hitting the balls recklessly around the pool table without concentrating on any given purpose, or without revising the basic rules you have been taught, such as how to control your body smoothly, could actually be detrimental to your overall game. True, you might accidentally discover and memorize some shot situations, but all you will really learn in the long run if you adopt this cavalier attitude towards practice sessions is that you are merely practicing your own mistakes. Instead, try practicing the lineup routine Jason has been demonstrating. It will give a much more accurate picture of which areas of your game need improving. You will clearly see how well you're executing certain shots and getting position for the next color. It could be that you find your screw shots and stun shots are fine, but your topspin strokes are causing a problem. Well, don't worry. This means that the practice routine has worked and you have pinpointed a flaw in your game without it costing dearly in a match. All you have to do now that the problem has been identified is to go back and work on the relevant stroke. Practicing these types of exercises also gives you a goal to strive for, something to aspire to, which is very important. They provide the intensity needed in your practice, instead of aimlessly slamming the balls around. Perhaps that old adage should be amended to perfect practice makes perfect. Once you have conquered all the facets of the game of pool we have discussed throughout this video, you will need to raise the difficulty level of your practice exercises to constantly challenge your ever-increasing abilities. Shooting the balls down without touching a second object ball, as the professional is now demonstrating, is an extremely beneficial drill indeed. Not only will it improve your shot making, it also encourages cue ball control and the mental aspects of the sport. Notice how Jason takes time to study the table before committing himself to play a shot. He is not just considering the next ball on either, as contemplating positional strokes 3 or 4 shots ahead is a vital aspect of successful break building. Assuming that you have the colors well spread over the table, this routine should just be difficult enough to challenge you, but at the same time, just easy enough to reasonably accomplish. Take note of the fact that the better player doesn't always choose the simplest ball to pot. Instead, after studying the situation presented before him on the table, he will select the option that gives him the best chance of continuing with the clearance. It must be stressed how crucial this fundamental tactic is, and it's important to make the strategy part of your game. Don't let the balls make up your mind for you. Shoot the balls you know you should, rather than simply the ones you fear least. Remembering the objective of this particular practice routine, clearing the table without allowing the cue ball to cannon into any other color, you will find it necessary to adopt most or all of the techniques we have covered in order to keep the white on a tight rein. In this example, you should recognize the professional's use of screw, stun, top and side spin strokes, and the resulting cue ball positions achieved because of them. Incorporating similar tactics into your own repertoire and conditioning your mind into thinking several shots ahead are the first steps towards the real secret of successful pool. You'll be playing the game to win. Other titles available in the Blue Moon Leisure Play Pool video series include Give It Your Best Shot, Learn How to Address the Table and Adopt the Perfect Stance, Forming the Correct Hand Grip and Why This Can Improve Your Cue Action, Bridging in Awkward Situations, The Secrets Behind Selecting the Best Equipment, How to Conquer the Basic Straight Pot During Match Play, plus 16 truly amazing trick shots. Take your pool to the highest level with the third volume in the series, Play Pool Advanced Techniques. Studying the benefits side spin can bring to your game. Mastering the complex swerve shots and how perfecting them can produce some truly incredible results. Using reverse side in positional play. This Advanced Techniques edition is guaranteed to improve anybody's standard of play regardless of ability. After studying this video along with the first 2 volumes in the Play Pool series, playing with topspin, backspin, reverse side or even swerves will become a natural part of your game. With practice, achieving a perfect 8-ball clearance can be made to look easy. 100 great trick shots performed by one of the world's top pool players. Non-stop action from start to finish. This 4th volume in the series is probably the finest collection of tricks ever seen on video. The sequel to Play Pool 100 Great Trick Shots. This 5th edition Trick Shots Explained teaches players in clear and precise detail how to set up the best shots for themselves. All the secrets are revealed with expert tuition from Jason Tornado Twist. Featuring the latest computer-generated graphics to help iron out any potential problems in the troubleshooting section, Trick Shots Explained guarantees to make any league player a local celebrity. The unique telescopic cues featured throughout the Play Pool video series offers any player unrivaled quality and versatility. Missing shots through overstretching can now be eliminated, as the professional is demonstrating by simply extending the concealed mechanism, any shot is always within reach. Restricted space a problem in your club? Not anymore. For further information on this unique range of cues, aluminium cases and accessories, please contact Blue Moon Leisure.